BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. And hello, everybody. Today is Wednesday, another Ripper Wednesday. Welcome to the show. How's everybody doing? This Ripper Wednesday is going to be a double event, to use some Whitechapel terminology. So there will be 2 episodes coming out here on Black Box Online Radio. And this episode is going to be discussing the book The Bell Tower by Robert Graysmith. Robert Graysmith is, of course, more famous for his Zodiac Killer book, but he has books out on several different true crime stories. And I participate in a regular discussion series on the French Wrecking Crew that's called the Zodiac Killer Panel. And it was brought up recently that I've made a lot of comments about Robert Graysmith's other books outside of the Zodiac world. One book that I've wanted to read for a long time has been The Bell Tower, but I've been horribly skeptical about it. However, I did find a book review that was written by John J. Eddleston in Jack the Ripper, an Encyclopedia, a book that I've been talking to you guys about a lot this summer, and I highly, highly recommend Jack the Ripper, an Encyclopedia. Not only does it have facts, but it also has a lot of commentary on the subject. And I want to be clear that this episode of Black Box Online Radio is not monetized. I'm mostly just sharing this as a reference and a resource, because one thing that I learned early on in the game is that Robert Graysmith is a true crime writer who blends the facts with the falsehoods, the facts with the fictitious, far-out, wacky ideas, and you don't completely get the truth. And he presents his material as true crime, but in all seriousness, it is not. To provide a book description of The Bell Tower, it says, "The year is 1896. The Jack the Ripper murders stop as mysteriously as they started. 5 years later, in a San Francisco church, brutally murdered priests, choir boys, and parishioners begin to appear. The pastor, an English priest, bears an uncanny resemblance to one of the eyewitness reports of the sole survivor of Jack the Ripper's attacks in London years ago. But another man has already been arrested, tried, and convicted for the San Francisco slayings." One more time, that was The Bell Tower. And this is just a note. Robert Graysmith is the award-winning political cartoonist for the San Francisco Chronicle, where he worked for 12 years, and a New York Times best-selling author, and he illustrates his true crime books in pen and ink. And he has written 10 books that have been translated into 12 languages, the most famous of which is Zodiac, of course. But I said I wanted to read John J. Eddleston's book review of this because this is something that I think is important to share. Graysmith presents his ideas as being factual. He's not saying that these are novels. He doesn't say that these are just stories that are loosely inspired by the true crime cases. He tries to make everyone believe that all of these things actually happened, and one person who called him out was John J. Eddleston. And this is the book review. Robert Graysmith's The Bell Tower was published in 1999. This suggests that the Ripper was actually 2 men, Pastor John George Gibson and his friend Pastor Jesse Gibson, no relation. John George Gibson went by the nickname Jack. Robert Graysmith offers no real evidence and appears to have created a work of fantasy. This includes the supposed proof that the murders were committed to form a patriarchal cross, but this theory requires an unrecorded attack in Rupert Street and assumes that the attack on Annie Millwood took place on the corner of White's Row and dismisses the fact that Martha Tabram's attack was nowhere near any line necessary to make the patriarchal cross. In effect, 4 of the murders, Mary Ann Nichols, Catherine Eddowes, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, form 2 lines that intersect somewhere north of Whitechapel High Street. And yes, of course, Jack the Ripper was a serial killer that operated in England in 1888, and Graysmith is going to be talking about additional crimes that also took place in California in 1896. We're dealing with some transatlantic and transcontinental movements of his suspects, plural. But I'll continue with John J. Eddleston's book review. The following errors are noted in Robert Graysmith's Jack the Ripper book. In general, the killer was certainly left-handed. Secondly, the second murder committed by Jack the Ripper was that of Martha Tabram, who died at 4:45 p.m. In the Tabram case, Dr. Killian stated that 38 wounds had been inflicted on Martha Tabram's body by a right-handed man, and the 39th wound had been inflicted by a left-handed man. No such claim can be substantiated. With the murder of Mary Ann Nichols, also known as Polly Nichols, Graysmith claims that her wedding ring was stolen by the killer. This can also not be substantiated. With the murder of Annie Chapman, Graysmith claims that she is the fourth victim murdered by Jack the Ripper. She was attacked in Lamb Street. This is untrue. Elizabeth Stride was found by Israel Schwartz, and Israel Schwartz said that he saw a knife in a second man's hand. No such witness sighting was reported of the knife. Elizabeth Stride's body was found by Charles Cross, and Charles Cross, I just have to jump in right now. You guys know that that's Charles Lechmere. He was the one who found the body of Polly Nichols, not the body of Liz Stride. Liz Stride was found by Louis Diemschutz, and also Isaac Kosa-Brodsky was present and nearby. Elizabeth had been stabbed and her throat was cut, and the murder weapon was a rounded blade. Now, in Graysmith's defense, this is a piece of disinfo, but this is something that has been shared a lot, and I even asked Richard Jones about this when I interviewed him for the channel Richard Jones of Jack the Ripper Tour, because if you do some sort of Jack the Ripper rabbit hole sleuthing, you will find this thing about how the victims that were murdered by Jack the Ripper are Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, Catherine Eddleston, and Mary Kelly, who were killed by a pointed bladed knife, and Liz Stride was killed by a shorter, rounded blade knife, and it appears that that is just some type of disinfo that is going around, and that is not something that has been purely substantiated. Other errors that are found in Graysmith's book. Catherine Eddowes was discharged from a police station 1 hour before she met a man named Joseph Lavenda. This claim is unsubstantiated. The murderer of Catherine Eddowes washed his hands in a sink off of Dorset Street. Dorset Street is even misspelled in the book. Mary Jane Kelly is the final victim of Jack the Ripper. Graysmith claims that with certainty the killer had a key to Mary Kelly's bedroom. This is unsubstantiated. Graysmith claims that Catherine Eddowes was arrested for being drunk in Bishopsgate. Graysmith claims that Inspector Collard sent a constable to fetch a doctor. All of this is unsubstantiated. Graysmith claims that the Goulston Street graffito was written in red chalk when almost certainly it was written in white chalk. The message was removed, though, so there are no photographs. However, the red chalk appears to be purely a myth. A sink off of Dorset Street was found to hold bloody water. The narrative accepts the fact that Catherine Eddowes knew the identity of the killer. This is unsubstantiated. Joseph Lavenda and his friends left a club at 1 a.m., and Mary Jane Kelly's room had a window that was removed to allow the photographer inside to photograph her body. This is also unsubstantiated and almost certainly false. Mary Ann Cox was a witness who heard someone leave Mary Kelly's room at 6:15 a.m. This is also unsubstantiated. So what I think John J. Eddleston is trying to do is something that I've been talking about for a long time, and that is just that Graysmith is creating infotainment. He's making up these stories just to be entertaining. That's what he does. And the reason why I called him out on this, the reason why people like John J. Eddleston call him out on this, is because he's acting like he's a true crime writer, but in reality, he is more of a novelist who found a way to sneak under the radar, and nobody really cared, and as long as Graysmith was putting on an entertaining show, and he has 9 other books out where he does the same thing in almost every book. But thank you so much for listening to this episode. As I said, I just wanted to share this as a reference, and I don't want to sound overly sour, but it's just, I don't want to give Graysmith my money. I don't want to give Robert Graysmith a single dollar, because a lot of people appreciate what he did for the Zodiac world, popularizing the Zodiac killer story, but at the same time, he's a liar. He is someone who does not tell the truth, and I don't think he deserves any credit and any type of financial support in any way. That's just my take on the subject. You can put your ideas in the comment section down below. Perhaps I can do an independent episode just on his suspects, Gibson and Gibson, and try to discuss them on the merits. But I would love to know what you guys think about Robert Graysmith, and I will include a link to a previous episode that I did called How True Crime Writers Lie to Us. That'll have, actually has Robert Graysmith in the thumbnail, but that will be featured in the pinned links down below. And if you do want to support this channel, you can just hit the like button and subscribe. As I said, this video wasn't monetized because these ideas came from John J. Eddleston. I just want to know more about what you guys have to say in the comment section, and you can write the show at blackboxonlineradio@AOL.com. And please look out for the second part of the double event here on Ripper Wednesday coming later today. My name is Ned DeHaan, and that's all for me. Until next time.